Alright, so I am going to be performing a EMOM for a 75-year-old patient who has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He also just recently recovered from COVID-19. He didn't require any hospitalizations for the virus, but he does have just general deconditioning from it. His biggest difficulties right now include community ambulation in busy streets or just going up and down steps. He also has issues with dynamic balance activities and has just general decreased endurance. He also has a kyphotic posture and difficulty reaching down to pick things up. So today we'll be taking him through a warm-up and then a EMOM activity designed to kind of combat some of these difficulties he's having, and at the end we will give him a cool down. We are not going to have any structured rest breaks during these intervals, but we are going to have him rest during any of the minutes he doesn't complete. So each of the activities will be done for 1 minute, and if he can't complete any of the activities, he'll be able to rest for the remaining activities. So now we are going to get started with his warm-up. Okay, so each of these warm-up activities are designed to target some of the muscles that we're going to be working on and just kind of getting his heart rate going to begin with. We're going to start in a seated position with a D2 flexion extension movement. So here is our patient doing that. So here's the patient performing that D2 flexion and extension. This is designed to open up his kyphotic posture, get his thoracic spine extending, and start to get that heart rate up. Okay, the next one we're going to do is marching in place seated. This is going to get his lower extremities starting to warm up and hopefully keep increasing that heart rate. We're going to continue for the full minute if possible. If not, we'll take a break whenever he gets too fatigued. Okay, so the third warm-up activity is a chair push-up. So this is kind of getting us into that sit to stand motion. So it's warming up his glutes and his triceps, and again, helping increase his heart rate. All right, so now we're going to work on seated reaching. We are going to have the patient reach across his body, getting a good rotation through that spine. So this is really good for Parkinson's patients, as a lot of time they do lack this rotation mobility. So getting him moving will help rotation in that thoracic spine. And please ignore the cat. And we'll repeat that for 1 whole minute or until he gets fatigued. Okay, so now we are going to perform a sit to stand. This is really getting the patient's legs nice and warm and increasing that heart rate. It's helping to strengthen his glutes and extensors and really getting that heart rate up. All right, perfect. And we'll continue for a full minute. It's likely he might not be able to make it for the full minute, so this will be a good 30-second break before we start into the actual exercises. Okay, so now what we're going to work on is we're going to work on the patient's dynamic balance. We're having him stand in nice small base of support to give him some challenge. And what we're going to do is we are going to toss a frisbee back and forth to really challenge his dynamic balance. He has that chair right behind him in case he is to get tired or feel like he's going to fall. But now I'm going to toss him the frisbee. He's going to catch and then throw it back. And we'll do that again for the full minute unless he gets fatigued, and then we will stop. Okay, for our second exercise, what we are going to do is we are going to be doing a squat with a lift. So the patient did say he was having difficulties lifting things up from the ground, and this will be good with doing that. It's definitely a functional task because he will be needing to do his own laundry since he does live alone. This also works on increasing his glute and lower extremity strength. We can add more weights into the basket as we go to progress this. So there's that. He will do it for a full minute or less if he's getting tired. Okay, for our third activity, I've created an obstacle course in the patient's living room to simulate the dynamic community walking. This is really going to work on his ability to navigate through the course. So there's pillows for him to step on, so it'll be different surfaces. He'll have to step over things, which will be like a curb that he has to go around or up. And it'll work on his endurance while we're walking through this too, and just help gait train overall. So I will give you a little peek of the obstacle course, and then we will have the patient go through it. Okay, so the patient is going to start at this disc. He's going to walk through this narrow pathway, and then he's going to have to go over this ball, around the table, over this, onto these pillows, and then through here, and lastly over that step onto the hard floor. Okay, so here's the patient performing the obstacle course. He's going around, over the ball, around the table, over there, running onto the pillow, also dodging a cat through the way, and then stepping over. All right, and then the patient can continue to complete the obstacle course for about a minute. It's likely that he'll only be able to be doing it for about 30 seconds before he gets too fatigued, and then we'll have him sit down and rest for the remainder of the 30 seconds before moving on to the fourth activity. Okay, so for the fourth activity, we are going to be working on getting in and out of the bathtub. The patient does have a bathtub that requires a pretty big step to go into the shower. So we'll definitely need to work on that because he doesn't have a shower seat. With this activity, we're really working on sidestepping. So we're working on his hip flexors and his dynamic balance. Being able to stand on his single leg is going to be really important for this activity. And it'll work on increasing strength in his lower extremities too. And it's a really good functional task that the patient is going to be able to need to do since he is living independently. So we're going to head over to the shower and show you how the patient will do this task. Okay, so the patient is going to work on sidestepping in and out of the tub just like this. This way he's really getting some good hip flexor work in, and he's working on balance. If he was having more trouble with this, I could help him definitely put a gait belt on him so he was nice and safe, but we would continue to do this for as long as he could for about a minute. Okay, now we're going to work on an overhead reach with the broom. So this is really helping to work on decreasing that kyphotic posture, opening up his spine, getting some big movements in there, which is good for Parkinson's patients. It also helps strengthen his upper extremities too, and also working on his balance. He's a little bit tall, so we'll have to be careful of the fan, but this is a really good exercise for him to do. We'll continue for the full minute unless he needs a break, and then we will take one. Okay, so those were our 5 exercises that I would have our patient do today. Now we're going to do a quick cool down. Again, we're going to do it in a EMOM type style, so each of these activities will be performed for about a minute. They are designed to kind of slow his heart rate down and complete the activity. So here they are. All right, so the first one we're going to do is just kind of cool down with some standing marching here. So we're just going to do some slow marches. It's still working on balance and a little bit of strength and endurance while still slowing his heart rate down because it's less of an exertion than like stepping over in the bathtub or with doing the obstacle course. So the next activity is we're going to be doing some big steps forward with big arms back. This is really good for Parkinson's patients as they struggle with getting those big movements in. So having these big movements will be good for that and just kind of slow down the system while still providing a little bit of an exercise. Okay, for our next cool down, we are going to just do some slow church pew sways. This is helping with some ankle mobility and activating those quads, which is good for strength. It also is an easy exercise for the cardiovascular system to kind of cool them down. So we will continue to do that for about a minute, and then we'll move on to our next exercise. For our last cool down, we're going to work on stretching. So we're going to stretch way down towards the ground and up towards the sky. We'll do this for a full minute, and this will be our last exercise, just getting a good stretch throughout the body, and that'll be it for our EMOM. All right, so that was the end of our EMOM that we would do with this Parkinson's patient for today. To progress these activities, I would do kind of the following. So for that first exercise where we're working on dynamic standing balance, and we were tossing the frisbee back and forth, what I would do next would be have the patient stand on an unstable surface. So put a pillow on the ground, have him stand on that, and then work on throwing back and forth. That will give him a little extra challenge. And then we can further progress to single leg stance throwing too. For that next exercise where we worked on bending down, picking up that laundry basket and bringing it back up, we could just progress that by adding more weights to it, or having him bring it all the way up above his head to really increase the work of his arms too. And then for that third exercise where we were doing that obstacle course, I think I would move the obstacle course outside and then incorporate him walking on the rocks outside, walking on the grass, and then walking on the cement. So giving him a bunch of different surfaces to walk on. And then from there, we could also incorporate a curb. So going both up the curb and then down the curb. And then we could even add some music, or if there were neighbors outside, that would be another kind of distracting element to make it a little bit more challenging on the patient system. And then for the fourth activity of getting in and out of the tub, if he was fine going sideways, I think the next thing I'd want to work on is taking big steps backwards. A lot of our Parkinson's patients tend to fall backwards because they don't have stability there. So either working on walking backwards first and then working on taking big steps backwards would be a good progression for that exercise. And then for our fifth activity, where we were kind of lifting that broom up and overhead, I think it would be a good way to progress would just be adding weights or getting something a little bit heavier than that broom. Or if the patient didn't have anything heavier, we could even incorporate that with a sit to stand. So we'll have the patient sit to stand with that broom and then come up to standing and then lift it over the head. So we're making it more of kind of adding on to it, making it a little more challenging mentally for the patient to do those. But yeah, I think that's how we would progress. And then obviously if the patient wasn't able to complete that full minute of those exercises and needed more of a break, our overall goal was to increase this patient's endurance. So hopefully he'll be able to do more of that minute without taking a break. That would be something to work on too. But altogether, that would be what we would do for this Parkinson's patient.